who does not have Down syndrome. And then Caleb is 12 and he has a dual diagnosis as well of Down syndrome and autism. So we can move on to what is Down Syndrome Day. So it's held on March 21st, and the goal is to educate people about Down syndrome and so that how individuals with Down syndrome need to be valued in our communities.
Right, and this started way back. It's relatively new. I mean, it hasn't been around forever. It started back in 2007, but then it wasn't until in 2012 that the General Assembly of the United Nations decided to observe it each year. So this isn't something that's just celebrated in the United States. It's something that's celebrated all over the world now, which is great. Plus, obviously, social media helps because people from all over the place share what they do for World Down Syndrome Day.
And the significance of the date of 321 is it represents the third copy of the 21st chromosome that's associated with Down syndrome. Okay, so we're going to talk about the history of the book donation program and basically what it is. So the program started out with basically Brooke and I have gone to our local school that our child was in, like Caleb. Well, Caleb wasn't even in school. I don't think Finn was in school yet either.
Right.
And we went to like Riley's and Brooke's school and said, hey, can we come and read a book about Down syndrome and talk about Down syndrome? So luckily in Manchester, there was a principal that was very willing to let us go in and talk to Riley's class. So I would bring Caleb with me. We'd read a book and do a presentation. And we'll show you a sample of the presentation as well. And then we went on and moved to the school district and had the entire school district in Manchester participating in World Down Syndrome Day. This was, gosh, Riley was in first grade, so she's in 11th now, so like 10 years ago.
Yeah, Denise and
do you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, Denise and I have extremely similar stories, and I can't even remember how old our kids were when we finally met. I feel like they were toddlers. But so Denise lives in Manchester, and I live in West Hartford. So it's West Hartford schools for me, but same type of thing. And Denise can tell you a little bit about how she asked for a mini grant for some books for her school district, because the thing that Denise and I quickly found out was there were a lot of books about autism or other different disabilities in some of the libraries, but there were hardly any books about Down syndrome or children's books with characters with Down syndrome. So that's kind of where it started, that we saw that there was a need for that.
So we started out by applying for a mini grant through the Down Syndrome Association. Actually, it was the Congress at the time, but so we applied for the mini grant and got that for a few books. So a few books went to the one school, and then that was successful. So I think it was a few years later. I don't know the exact timing, so I apologize. But we went out and went for another mini grant, which was not quite as many, and we were able to put out the books to the entire district of Manchester for all their elementary schools. So their middle schools observed World Down Syndrome Day, and so did the high school, but the focus was to get those books into the elementary schools. At the time, there really wasn't a lot of books for middle school and the high school level at that time. So um, after the mini grant, we moved on and figured that there's a need for these books to get out to classrooms. So with that, the awareness committee was created and is now the education and outreach committee. So, do you want to add to that, Brooke? Do you
Yeah,
have
well,
anything?
yeah, I was just gonna say, so then it was kind of around that same time that both Denise and I and some other members of the awareness committee, excuse me, went out to our local libraries and said, "Hey, can you show me any books that you have on Down syndrome?" And a lot of them were just educational books that were in the resource center, like for teachers, for example. So there weren't many books in the regular public libraries about kids with Down syndrome. So that's where we expanded. We're like, hey, we have an opportunity here, not only to start this program and gift books to the schools, but also libraries. And then that's since expanded a little bit to daycares and healthcare facilities. And then Denise and I and Shannon were just recently talking about also expanding that to possibly some colleges as well. Um, just to get it into the hands of these different people. So and one thing I want to mention, just talking about libraries, since we're talking about it, I would encourage any of you when you're going into your local libraries, kind of another obstacle is um, I've noticed that sometimes when you go into the libraries, even when they've been given books about, children's books about Down syndrome, that they were still continuing to put them in the resource area and not put them in with all the other regular books, which, I had a very nice conversation with one of the librarians, and I'm like, but the goal is I want typical children to be able to check these books out. So could you please consider putting them in with the regular books? So that's just some questions that maybe you may want to ask your local librarians.
Okay, so next we're going to move on to how to approach a school or school district to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day. Um, so, like we said, I originally started out with the principal at one of our local schools that happened, the school at the time that Riley was going to. And I just asked him, hey, would you be interested in celebrating World Down Syndrome Day? And so we started with that, and I went in and I read to several classrooms, and I did, I talked to the kids about Down syndrome, and we had a little question and answer session. So any difficult questions that would come up or ones that I wasn't comfortable answering in a classroom, I left that to the teachers or um, let the kids know that, hey, you can ask your parents or your teachers that question. That's, you know, part, we'll move on to other questions in this presentation. So you kind of field what you are comfortable with answering. Um, just trying to make sure I cover everything here.
Denise, can you mind if I go back to one thing for a
Okay,
second?
sure.
So, and I'll just say too, I think Denise and I were lucky that in the beginning we had some, great principals that were open to the idea of celebrating World Down Syndrome Day. In West Hartford, we have 11 elementary schools, a lot of elementary schools. The majority of them were wonderful and great and gracious and were like, yes, we would love to participate. But I had a couple that weren't so open to it. But it really was once, I got the ball rolling and these other principals of these schools saw, well, geez, all the other elementary schools are celebrating it. And then Denise can talk a little bit too about how, going to your director of pupil services or whoever your head of special ed is and getting the buy-in from the very top, because that makes things a lot easier because then hopefully they can send a message out to the entire district and say, hey, this is something that we would like to participate in and celebrate. And then it kind of gives the green light to the rest of the schools that, this is something to do, and this is something that we're definitely going to participate in.
So, with that, I went out to the director of pupil personnel services, and I asked her if we could make this a district-wide um, day of celebrating World Down Syndrome Day to get the word out about it. Because there were in Manchester, there weren't a lot of children with Down syndrome, but enough to um, need that awareness going on. And I think in any school, you really need that, and getting out to the kids at a young age is the best. So we included preschools, we included the elementary, we did middle school and high school as well. Now, like I said, the middle schools and the high school did not originally get books. Currently, we do offer those out to the middle school and high school level. But so basically, I went out to the director and I said, okay, so here's my ideas. And she had me sit down with the principal of my daughter's school at the time. And we came up with the activity list, which a lot of it is on the DS Act, school activity and celebration ideas list. We've tweaked it over the years. So I gave them ideas for activities and what they could do. There's a flyer that we can send out. It can be found. All these documents, other than the presentation right now, are on the DS Act website that we'll talk about. So we had the World Down Syndrome Day flyers. So now you can customize them to put your child's picture on it. Some school districts are reluctant with that. So like you see the picture on this Rock Your Socks screen. This was Caleb's preschool classroom of all their little feet, and that was put in the middle of Rock Your Socks flyer because the district didn't want one child being on um, on the flyer. So
Right.
they didn't want other parents feeling left out if they had a child with Down syndrome. So that was fine. I didn't care because it was getting the word out. Like my feelings weren't hurt. Um, the other things we share are the book and video recommendations. It used to be a list, and it's evolved to whether the books or videos are good for elementary, middle school, high school, and then for adults. Because a lot of people ask for recommended books, and like you see it all the time on Facebook, and so there is a list out there. And there is each book, there is a link going to where you can find that book or that video. So you can link right to it, and it's helpful for schools because they can just click on it and go right to the video or the book, because there's one book that you can actually read online, which is it's called My Friend Isabel. So I don't know if you can see this book. So this one you can actually read online. I gave the school districts coloring worksheets. I've given them, like, there's a coloring book that you can use as well. The other ideas, they could read facts for about World Down Syndrome Day over the loudspeaker. I don't know if they still do that in school because my kids are now homeschooled, but they
Yeah,
used to.
yeah, they did it at Finn School. I was just going to jump in and say that, and by all means, like if you're new to this and you're approaching your school for the first time, I always say to them, you can do, because bottom line, we just want to encourage them to start. So I always say, you can do all of these things or just one or two of these things if you want. So if they just want to do, hey, we're going to do the rock your socks day because it's fun and it's kind of a hook for the kids, right? And then do, morning announcements or announcements throughout the day, sharing a couple facts about Down syndrome, then that's fine. Or, but there's other schools, I mean, they love it. They love that, that parents are taking the initiative, and especially since this is, you know especially if you're willing to go in and read the book or do the presentation or whatever, or even if you can't, even if you can just provide the supplies, they're just so thankful that it's not something that they have to create or do. So but you just, with 11 elementary schools, we have some schools that they do, and Denise and I were going to touch upon this briefly. They do announcements, they do rock your socks, they do some sort of fundraising component. World Down Syndrome Day is not meant for that. It's not meant as a fundraiser, but by all means, we would, donations are welcome, but we don't ever want schools to feel pressure about that, because I've had it go both ways. Some of them really want to do fundraisers, and they'll, similar to like when the Children's Hospital did the PJ Day, and they had a suggested donation of $1. Some of the schools have done that in my district. Or we did a sock donation for the homeless, since it was Rock Your Socks Day. But I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, the districts can go out and do anything they really want to do for these activities. We give a lot of ideas, like planting flowers, doing the kindness rocks. Some of those, like they'd like to incorporate different activities in. So it could, um, work into their art classes or STEM or whatever. Um, Trying to think if there's anything else before we move on.
Yeah,
You have anything else?
we've had, librarians in the library set up a little table with, books about us. If they don't have enough books about Down syndrome, they can do books about Down syndrome and autism and disability in general. Like Denise said, for art class, one year, one of Finn's art teachers had all the kids like trace their leg and foot and then color socks, color, the pretend socks on there. So creative. And I definitely encourage you to ask the principals to get the student council involved, because they are so creative with some of the ideas that they've come up with. And you can have the kids do bulletin boards, all kinds of fun things.
Okay. So, how next we'll talk about how to go in and talk to a classroom. So what's on your screen is a presentation that I use for um, a third grade classroom in one of the Manchester schools. Still, Caleb and I go in and we present to the entire third grade of one of our local elementary schools. So I'm just going to go through the presentation and then we'll touch on some other things. So this is Caleb, and he's 11 years old. He has Down syndrome. And I list all his activities that he likes to do. And we include how his friends and family support him and all individuals with Down syndrome. And we show pictures of the step up walk here. So you can move on to the next one, Shannon. So then here I ask the kids what these look like, and they get so excited over this for some reason, I don't know, but I ask them what they look like, and usually they'll say socks, and I tell them yes, that's correct, and then we talk about the 3 copies of the 21st chromosome and what um, how that relates to Down syndrome. And you can go on, sorry. And then we talk about what is Down syndrome, and I give them a few statistics and, that they can't catch Down syndrome. It's if you have Down syndrome, you're born with it, you have it for life. And then we explain about the chromosomes and how we typically have 46 chromosomes, and a person with Down syndrome has 47. And then I explain about the chromosomes and how it relates to your characteristics of hair color, eye color, height, and more. Um, and how the extra chromosome in somebody with Down syndrome, um, their cells crowd the other chromosomes and make it harder for each cell to do its job. You can move on, Shannon. So I'm not going to read this word for word. This can be shared out to you guys. And why is it called Down syndrome? And this is John Langston Down, who wrote a publication describing characteristics of Down syndrome. So it's named after him.
The
Go ahead,
kids
Shannon.
always love that slide too. They always think that's
Yeah,
very interesting, that there was actually someone named Dr. Down.
yeah. So this is like living with Down syndrome. Advocate for person first language. People with Down syndrome learn the same things you and I learn, but it might take longer. So I kind of give them some little statistics about Down syndrome, because these are some of the commonly asked questions with some of the kids, like uh and it gives some other interesting facts about the low muscle tone and the creases in their hands. They're always amused with the creases in their hands. So I show Caleb's hand and how um he has the single crease across the center of his palm, and they're always so interested with these fun facts. Um, that they do the same activities that we do. I mean, Caleb goes horseback riding, and I mean other kids don't do that. So that's a fun fact for them as well. And then just at the end, you kind of say that people with Down syndrome are much more like everyone, than they are different. And this presentation can be adapted. Like you could take this presentation, and you can make it your own. So you can use this as a template, or you can make your own.
But
And then you
Denise,
can move
like,
on.
so people could use this as their own and then just change. Obviously, their child's not Caleb, so they would
Mhm.
want to
Right.
so that would really be the only one that they would have to change, and then but they could use all the other slides, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this presentation can be given to the school districts. If you don't want to put your child on it, feel free to use Caleb. He's fine. Um, but you can adapt it and bring it out to your school district along with like the suggested activities, the books and videos. And it can all be emailed to them. If you're not comfortable with doing any of that, Brooke and I can always reach out for you, or Shannon, or anybody. Just let us know if you need help. You can move on to the next slide, Shannon.
Yeah, Denise and I both have helped people in the past where maybe for a variety of different reasons they weren't comfortable reaching out to their either principal or director of pupil services, and we're more than happy to help with that if that's something you need help with.
Um, how do I make friends with a person with Down syndrome? Some kids might feel uncomfortable, and this is a slide to just kind of give them that boost of confidence to say, hey, I just need to just smile at them or say hello and wave, and let's see what else. Tell them how they have a cool shirt on, or say something nice about them. Play with them. They can throw a ball and catch a ball or whatever. You can ask them questions. They'll answer questions. Some are not nonverbal and might use sign language. But the teachers in this, they can always jump in and help with this too.
Right. I definitely find it's a little different from school to school. Like obviously at the schools here in West Hartford where Finn was a student, or there's, several other schools that have students with Down syndrome, the conversation was a little easier because the kids personally knew someone with Down syndrome. The schools where they don't, the kids tended to be, a little more quiet, but still ask questions. But it's definitely a little easier if they, are friends with or know someone with Down syndrome.
Yeah, I find that like the the third grade that we go into, none of them know Caleb, other than us going in there. And they asked tons of questions. Like I could be there probably all day answering their
Right,
questions. So
right.
we cut it off at some point. So Shannon, you can move on to the next one. So, what can you do as ambassadors for Down syndrome awareness? Again, always use the people first language. John happens to have Down syndrome. Don't say the Downs kid name is John. Um, and actually, that's a good one to even teach some of the teachers, because we still find that even in the medical community, we're still hearing those words. So, and then the wearing the silly mismatched crazy multiple socks on World Down Syndrome Day. When you rock your socks, someone may ask you about your socks and you can start a conversation about Down syndrome. You can wear blue and yellow, or in October, so on World Down Syndrome Day, or in October for Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and show others how to be a good friend to someone with Down syndrome. So this can also be adopted for um, Down Syndrome Awareness Month in October. So maybe the timing in April's not, I'm sorry, March is not good for celebrating World Down Syndrome Day, but maybe October works better for their school. So it could be adopted for that. It could go for both. So the choice is yours, and you can move on. And then I close with asking the kids any questions. Um, and I'll read it. Like usually I'll start by reading a book to them, then I'll move into the presentation, and then I'll ask for questions at the end. So I let them know ahead of time, hey, hold your questions for the end. Because if they ask me halfway through, I might get very distracted and not get through all of the presentation. So
Right. I was gonna say with the smaller kids, like preschool through probably 3rd, I would read a book and then go over through some information. But I mean, like this presentation that Denise just showed all of you, this really could be used, I would say, even up to 6th grade.
yeah.
Because, by 4th, 5th, 6th grade, the obviously the kids are all, the majority of them can read, and, they're not wanting to have a book read to them. So maybe you just do this instead. You just do this presentation, or there's been some years where I've actually printed this out and handed out handouts. If for whatever reason you don't have the ability to have it shown up on a projector or whatever. So
The other thing is to printing it out, the parents can also look at it. So if they sent it home with the kids, the parents could also look at it and have a conversation about it.
yeah, that's a
Um,
great point.
the other thing we do hand out too, because Caleb just loves doing this, and Shannon always gets a kick out of this too, is I have these little ducks and they have the DS Act QR code. So it takes them right to the DS Act website. So they can, and I tell them if you have questions, you can always go to the Down Syndrome um, Association website and look at, you know, look for information. And it also gives the parents a way to see any information or help their children. The other
I've also
thing I wanted to mention was when Caleb was in preschool, so I created a book that had him in it, and then just a little bit about him and put, I don't, you probably can't see this because I have it blurred, but it just basically says, you know, it's kind of like this presentation, but it tells about who he is, that he loves his family, that it might take some more doctor and therapy visits, explaining that, maybe he leaves the classroom for his occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, um,
I think
and
that's a
it was
Denise.
just very personal for
Yeah, I was just
especially
going to
in the
say.
preschool years.
So sorry. I was just going to say that's such a great point. I hadn't thought about it before, but that's something that I always make sure to talk to the kids about too, because they're always very curious why they're like, why isn't Finn around all the time? What is he getting pulled out for? So that's a great opportunity to talk about, a little bit depending upon the age of the child, hey, what's occupational therapy? What's physical therapy? Finn goes to see a SLP, a speech person, and because Finn is mostly nonverbal, so Finn speaks very little, but he also uses American Sign Language, and also he just started using a device last year with a special app on it to help him talk, and the kids are very interested by all of that. So, sorry, Denise.
That's okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that you can make a personalized book all about your child and share that with the class too. Um, the one of the questions that was asked was again about the reading or talking to middle schools, and the book that I found for middle schools that I absolutely love, and I just have to say that Riley's Winning Catch is probably my favorite book for middle and high school. Um,
And that
this year,
and all of those books are on the book list, and it says what grades they're for, right, Denise?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Um, the book that I used for the third grade classroom, which it's called More Alike Than Different. I don't know if you can see this, but it's got a dog on it, and it's a Down syndrome awareness tale. It talks about it the main character is a dog, and I just kind of put it out there saying that animals can't have Down syndrome, but it's a good representation of a Down syndrome story. So, and the kids love this book; they love it. And I've also read Eli Included. That's another favorite book. Uh, Brooke, do you have any that you usually read to your classes?
I've for the smaller kids, a book that was gifted to me when Finn was a baby and I was welcomed into the Down Syndrome Association is Painting the Octopus Red, which is a great book. And the nice thing too is it has a nice question and answer section at the back that teachers or parents can use. And we're also going to have something like that, questions and answers for parents and teachers that will be available on the website as well. But there's so many great books now. I feel like there were a lot fewer 15 years ago, but there's some really great books out now and very diverse.
Yeah, there's The Adventures of Super Captain Brave Man. It's book 4, Down on Safari is a really great book that we added a few years ago.
I love that book.
Um, yes.
Um, I think it got donated by you guys to our library 2 years ago. So we took it out like multiple times. And so
So
it's really
here.
it's a good one. It's a
Well,
little long, but it's a good one. Like I like reading it to the
Yeah.
boys.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like you don't want to read one that's so long that it doesn't keep the kids' attention. So
Right.
that's why I definitely recommend looking through them first and
Yeah.
seeing, that it's appropriate for the age group. And also, please, guys, if you know of some great books that you're like, oh, this would be great for the book donation program, please email those suggestions to us to the awareness email, which we can share that at the end, but it's awareness@mydsact.org, because we are always looking for, we don't want to, there are some like tried and true books that we have donated year after year, but we do always try to pick some new ones as well.
That Heather Avis one is really good. Like we have that one. It's an easy read. Um, the boys like that. I think that would be a good one for like more preschool. Like I've donated that one personally to like our daycare and stuff, for World Down Syndrome Day too. So, um, and like a few other different things.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
the awareness email can also be used if you have questions for any documents you need, or if you need help reaching out to schools, you can let us know through that as well. So, or any questions you think of after we finish the webinar.
Do we want to allow for questions now, Denise, or do
Yeah.
you have
Oh,
any?
yeah. 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 If anybody has any questions, we can take those now.
Anybody has anything they can think of?
I don't have a question, but I actually I think when I saw that Brooke posted about this, I sent an email to Santino and Sal's principal. So Sal's in kindergarten, Santino's in pre-K 3 and we're in Watertown. And there's 2 other families that have kids with Down syndrome that are involved in the association. So Darla, she's in 2nd grade, and Annette and her son Weston is in pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 are the same. So I reached out to both of them in addition to the principal, about maybe doing a little presentation. They do virtual announcements, so they'll make an announcement Monday and have us come in on Friday, and so we'll have the kids and stuff hopefully for that. So I like the PowerPoint if we could use that, and kind of update it. They also have a poster in the hallway of Darla that I think Nell made, her mom, with a picture of her and kind of, about her. So like in the main hallway of the school, you walk through and there's another girl at the school who has Rett syndrome. So they have a poster for her too. So really whatever parents are like most comfortable with, they're very receptive. And my husband teaches at the middle school in town. So I asked him if he would want to present something and he's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, maybe next year, but I think our district is super supportive, which is nice. And then for like stuff that I've done for Sal's class, like I'll share it with you guys, but just like a little printout I found from somebody else just about like what Down syndrome is. And I send it with like the multicolored goldfish, like for all the kids in the class. Like, so they're all the same goldfish, but they're all different. So kind of just a little something.
That's great. Yeah, that's
Just
wonderful.
just a comment on, you said your husband wasn't comfortable with presenting. You could always mention that the librarian could read it during if they have like a library time, or the principal, and like maybe the principal could record it and put it out to the students. Because sometimes it's almost like a celebrity reading to them. Or you could record yourself and present it out to that school.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good idea.
so
Yeah,
those
maybe
are some
if you're
options.
more comfortable with it, Sarah,
Yeah, I'll just go on the Watertown school tour of the day
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Santino in tow. But yeah, no, I brought him there actually right before, like just to go visit my husband, and all the kids were like so interested, like all the middle schoolers, they were so interested in him. He's just walking around the hallways like he owns the place. The teachers know him and stuff, but it's just really cute. So
That's
uh,
wonderful.
yeah.
And I'll say our goal is or the focus is schools, but we have definitely had businesses, gyms, places where people work out. We highly encourage if they want to get involved as well and do a rock your socks, event that day and take pictures and post them on social media. Please do feel free to tag us. That's great. We love to see that, anything to help awareness and just kind of start the conversation about what Down syndrome is and isn't, because I think there's still a lot of people that they're very nervous to talk about disability, right? Because before, I know before Kevin and I had Finn, we didn't really know anyone who was disabled. We don't have anyone else in our family. So, for some people, it can be a really hard conversation, or they're afraid to say the wrong thing or whatever. But that's why we just really want to open up the conversations.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say is we put out a table display at the Ellington YMCA for World Down Syndrome Day. So we put out materials on the Down Syndrome Association, and I also do put out, I believe, some of Caleb's Step Up Walk stuff. Um, there is a lot of interest in it because I know the people at the front very well, and there's a lot of interest, and there's many people with Down syndrome that do go to the Ellington YMCA. So in putting that out, it may get even that particular location interested in doing something to uh, as an inclusive program with our kids. So just a thought.
Does anyone else have a question or a comment? No? Okay. Well, like we were saying, Denise and I are here to help if anyone needs any help. And again, we would love any book suggestions you might have. So please feel free to send those to the Awareness Committee email, which again is awareness@mydsact.org. But we really appreciate all of your time today.